Tomb Raider is a film based on a video game that, like every other video game before it, doesn't know if it should lean into the video game aspects or stay away from it entirely. The film decides to superficially become the most recent reboot, but in all other aspects it seems to have borrowed from any other adventure survival film. It does this quite decently despite rushing through the scenes at a breakneck pace. It doesn't feel like 2 hours, but for once that's actually a criticism. I would have appreciated more time with Lara Croft surviving and understanding the Indiana Jones-esque traps in store for her. Alicia Vikander plays Lara Croft, who in the opening scenes holds just as many thrill-seeking jobs as she does different accents. I almost hit accent bingo when she decides to switch from British to American to Swedish, then back to British again. It was an accent rollercoaster, but despite that, she brings in quite a charismatic role. Lara Croft has some missing daddy issues, which leads her to a Japanese island where Walter Goggins adds some boo hiss as a evil archaeologist who is virtually running a slave mill. Despite being a mostly run-of-the-mill baddie, there is an interesting overtone which he views himself as just clocking in for a day at work, of which even he is just a cog in the industrial machine, of which there's a whole academy full of evil archaeologists just waiting for the job to be vacated. As we turn to spoilers, I must remind you that this is a political film criticism podcast, so regardless of the film, I will go into the political meanings the film upholds. The representation is quite nicely done in the film, despite the white woman being an heiress to $1 million fortune. She also has wonderful chemistry with her brief sidekick Daniel Wu, who is one of the many Asian men to have been shown as the slaves of the southern accented Walton Goggins. Quite interesting imagery seeing white men in charge of Asian men who are bursting at the scene to rebel from the very start. I appreciate the film showing how stupid it is to inspire hatred and cruelty as your ruling MO. If you're killing 6 slaves just because they want to rest, you might want to develop some insight into why your worker morale and productivity is lowering. There are also some interesting depictions of Lara Croft's femininity, which despite me being a straight white male, I thought I picked up some quite progressive vibes. She portrays her intense acts of pain and guts for survival with equal gruffness that isn't shown in women much. Her grunts and yelps of pain portray her femininity with no airbrushed noises. This seems like a bizarre angle for me to take, but I thought her cries of pain were so human. Usually women going through so much violence tends to give off a semi-erotic grunts, but in this case, it sounds dangerously real. Luckily, there isn't too much male on female violence, which I imagine would be quite annoying to rewatch over and over again, especially considering the culture around women within video games. Speaking of which, I would have appreciated more evil traps and historical puzzles, but this film seems to speedrun through the plot, of which it ticks off all the classic tropes. Dad isn't dead, but will due to a plot-mandated selfless sacrifice. Being unaware of the lore around the video game, I wasn't aware of whether the treasures, enemies, and lore are supernatural, but from the very opening the film hypes up a gigantic godlike supernatural threat. But get this, it turns out just to be a historical case of a zombie virus. It seems silly, but I was quite impressed with the historical portrayal being so hysterical that a regular zombie is misinterpreted to be a demon. The supernatural turned sci-fi. Anyway, the history of the video games is that it's usually been terrible, but now with Warcraft, Prince of Persia and this, they've finally reached the mighty heights of just being okay. I give this 3 out of 5. I also have a podcast in which I have discussed the political news stories of today. Thank you for hopefully watching.